Big Questions with the Dead Milkmen.
Then we went to this strange place where I saw plenty of delicious-looking delicacies, and I ate a lot of the things that were on the table.
Perhaps it was the food last night that has made you so sick now.
Oh, hi! Greetings, Gherkins. Rodney Anonymous here. This is one of those episodes that we have in the can. It's one of the ones that we keep ready for whenever the band might be on tour, or maybe we're in the studio. Maybe we're just not speaking to each other. That happens a lot more often than you might think. What we do is we get a member of the band to show you some of their equipment. I mean musical equipment, not anything freaky. Nothing freaky is happening here. It's musical equipment they use in the Dead Milkmen. Then they tell you all about it. You watch the episode, and hopefully you don't die of boredom. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some musical equipment I used back in the 1990s, and some of the, and when I say musical equipment, I mean keyboard equipment, and then some of the keyboard equipment that I use today. Got it? Okay. Well, come with me now back to the past. Won't you? All right, I'm sorry. Please come with me now back to the past, won't you? I don't care what the American Medical Association says. The 7th cup of coffee of the day, just as good as the first. All right, so welcome to the past, which is much more brightly lit than the present was. If you'd seen the Dead Milkmen in the early 90s, first of all, apologies. We weren't very good back then. I hit a particular low around 1992. So this is the setup that you would have seen, though, on stage where I am, my side of the stage, in the early 90s. So we're just going to pretend that it's 1992, and this is exactly what you would have seen. My setup back then consisted of the Yamaha DX11 and the Ensoniq EPS-16 Plus sampler, rack model. Very important. Didn't need a keyboard. I had this. So the DX11 came out in 1988, and I think I got mine shortly thereafter. This is not my original DX11. That was thrown into an audience in Austin, Texas, and a very stupid and foolish move. I thought I'd never be able to fix it, but as it turns out, years later, one of our viewers, a Mr. Goldfinger, that's his name, had found one of these, and he couldn't get it up and running, and battery problems. I said, let me have a shot at it. So it turns out I could have fixed the DX11 back then. I'm such a foolish man. Anyway, this is a 4-operator FM synth. You probably don't care about that, but it may come up at a party. Like you may be at a fancy cocktail party, and somebody say, well, the DX11 had 6 operators. And you go, oh no, it was a 4-operator synth. And then they'll say, wow, you're very knowledgeable. How would you like to be our new executive vice president? And you've landed the job. Anyway, some people do not care for the sound of FM synthesis. I know Joe, not a big fan, because it approximates real-life sounds. That's actually why I love it and why Brian Eno loves it. It's that uncanny valley thing. It's not quite real, but it's close enough. Or it's just a little shiver down your spine. I like to get really icy sounds out of these. So yeah, I've got one now, and happy again. We can recreate all the old Dead Milkmen stuff, and that's what I've been doing bit by bit. Okay, now, a lot of people, like I said, they didn't like the idea of synthesized sounds. What they wanted was something that sounded like the real thing, and that's where the EPS-16 Plus comes in. Now, I'm going to show you this. This is going to fire it up, and you're going to see the first thing it's going to do is ask for a disc. And I can bring the camera in just a little bit closer for that. You see that? It says, please insert disc. Yeah. So, you had to have discs, which obviously you needed lots and lots of them. I have lots and lots of them. many discs. Talk about these in a second, but what I want to say is you needed to have this, which is the operating system disc. This is El Dorado. This is gold. You'll often see these on eBay. I have, because people will get them and the disc would corrupt, and these will corrupt very easily. And I once had somebody walk on stage, get a beer, throw the beer right into my sampler and scream, "Computers don't belong in punk rock." And technically he was right. I mean, unless you count, you know, bands like Throbbing Gristle, for example. So I'm going to take this and put it in here. Hopefully I'll put it in the right way. Oftentimes to be a little lit on stage, particularly in 1992, and you put it in the wrong way. And we've all put it in the wrong way. Okay, here we go. Oh. Nope, see? I did it. I put it in the wrong way. Let's go backwards. There we go. Oh, now we see it. And it should now say loading system. And it takes a second to load the system. And, yep, no instruments. You would then have to load the instruments one at a time. As you can see, this will hold, it's up to 8 instruments. It could not hold 18. Up to 8 instruments. And that was depending on how big the instrument sizes were, how much disk space it took up. Sometimes you'd be lucky you get like 3 or 4 in there, the larger ones. Just want to show you something by comparison. When I bought this back in the day, in 1990, I think I paid $2,500 for it. An incredible amount of money. I could have put it down. I could have really put a down payment on a house back then for that type of money. But I got this. It was the biggest check I'd ever written, and I got this. Now I want to show you something here. I don't know if you can see it. This is a I'm hoping you can see it because I'm going to hold it right up to the camera and make sure you can see it. This is an Akai MPX8. And you'll notice it also holds 8 samples, and it costs a lot less than $2,500. I think it costs about maybe $100, but it does pretty much the same thing. You just hit the pads. This is a little more complicated. Now this doesn't have some of the features this has. You could go in and you could edit like a mofo on this one, and you could reverse the samples. I think you might be able to do that on that. Never really did much of a deep dive into one of these. I use it for simple stuff. And by the way, while that takes discs, ironically, this also takes a disc. So we really haven't come that far. We're still ignorant savages roaming the plains, foraging for nuts and berries. Now, the discs were really weird. Sometimes they would come from Ensoniq, and this one's from the band The System. Remember that band, You're in my system? Yeah, and they put this out, and you would just, again, I almost put it in backwards, I think. Here we go. No, I keep putting them in backwards. I'm an ignoramus. Wait, this was not even going in there. Oh, duh. You have to remove the operating disc. I'm not even drunk, but in 1992, I was hammered all the time. So there was lots of mistakes happening on stage. So let's try. There we go. Okay, here we are. Yay! All right, here we go. Now it's going to load it. So we hit load. And system hits. Yeah, I'll take that. That was just a bunch of like orchestra hits. And I'll put that over here. Oh, here it is. Yes. There we go. Pick instrument location. And it's loading the system bell ding. So embarrassing. Well, anyway, that was a joy of using a sampler back then. The weird thing about this one was that I have these discs, as I've shown you, tons and tons of them. And I was out in Seattle, and I gave some discs as a gift to Tom Shear from Assemblage 23. Assemblage 23 is one of those crazy bands that all the kids love. They make a lot of noise, very rock and roll. And Tom actually took one of the flute sounds. It might have even been the flute sound that was used on Silly Dreams. And he put that in the song and actually became a big hit. So you can still have a big hit with one of these. Which is probably why you're asking, if it still does all this stuff, why don't you use it? Within the case that you see it here, contained in the case, and had to go everywhere in the case, it weighs about 45 pounds. Now, if you combine that with the DX11, which put in its case weighs about 27 pounds, you can see what a nightmare that was to travel with. And I would go to practice, particularly when we reformed. I would take the train out, and I'd kind of walk like 10 feet, put them down, huff and puff for a while, pick them up, walk until I got to the rehearsal space. And then I'd have to sometimes go up several flights of stairs. Just bringing this thing up from the basement where it's normally stored, yeah, that was a nightmare. So this is what I used to use back in the 90s. You can see why I got rid of it. It was heavy. It was outmoded. It got replaced by something much smaller and much more useful. It had its charms, but it really, looking back on it, I'm kind of glad I moved on. And now I'm going to show you what I moved on to. So now we will travel back to the present. Hey, hello Gherkins. Welcome back to the present. I have a little bit of a hangover from visiting 1992. I will never visit 1992 again, but fortunately I have a lot of black coffee on hand. Some people call me a workaholic, but I like to think of myself as a black coffee enthusiast. 10 to 12 cups in the morning and I'm good to go for another 10 to 12 cups in the afternoon. And then I have 6 or 7 cups before I go to sleep, which usually about a half hour sleep, and then I'm up again for more coffee. So let me just put this down and we're going to talk about all this stuff right here. Okay, so this is the setup that I use now on stage. So if you come to see us now, first of all, we're a lot better because I'm not lugging heavy equipment around, but this stuff works out a lot better than the old setup, and I will now tell you why. What we have right here is an Akai Max Pro 49, and it's called a 49 because it has 49 keys, not because they made 48 versions before and it just didn't work out. Not like Formula 409, where they made 408 versions. They were getting ready to quit, and they said, no, 409, this will work. Although I wish they'd gotten the Formula 420. Whole nother story. Anyway, this is a controller. Now, the thing to know about a controller is a controller does not make any sound. You're going to wonder, where does the sound come from? We'll get to that in a minute. The great thing about this controller is I have 12 pads that I can use to fire samples, and so sometimes you'll see me playing and you also hear something else happening, and what's going on there is I'm playing and I'm hitting the pads. It also has 8 sliders, and the sliders are used to control parameters over here, and I can do things like control the volume, and I can move some other things around. I'll get some footage and I'll drop that in here just so you have an idea of what you're talking about. The reason I like this thing most of all though, it just looks cool. It looks like a sort of cherry red Hot Wheel. And I love Hot Wheels. I used to collect Hot Wheels. Any sort of controller that looks like a Hot Wheel, I will instantly love. Like I say, again, it is a controller. This itself makes no sound. The sound comes out of the laptop. We played a punk show probably within like the last 10 years. And it was an old punk club, and this totally blew this one guy's mind. He was like, "Whoa, the sound comes out of there?" I'm like, "Yes, it does." And he was like, "Oh, well, show me." He was really curious. It was great. He was like, "Well, how does this work? You stack these things," and he was really into it. If you're working a punk club and you're over 40 years old, you probably, any new technology will blow your mind. Like a blender is like a spaceship. If you make it to 40 at a punk club, you don't need to learn anything else. So, where was I? Oh yes, I was talking about the laptop. The laptop is just a simple Acer. It didn't cost that much. It was recommended to me by a friend of mine who's a DJ. He said that it does really well with sort of sound programs. Well, DAWs, which are digital audio workstation, that's a DAW, and the DAW I use is called FL Studio. I'm a big fan of it. I've been promoting it, but the truth is, folks, all DAWs are pretty much the same. So Ableton is just as good as FL Studio. FL Studio is just as good as Reaper. There's people get argumentative about them. I don't. FL Studio works well for me. I like the workflow. It's great for what I do. And the reason I use it, because I had started, after I came back from playing using all the equipment that was super heavy and I used to have to lug around, all the stuff we just saw, and I realized, okay, I've got to change up. I've got to get something more modern, and I should definitely go to a laptop. I work in IT. I figure I can figure stuff out. I tried a bunch of different types of DAWs, including, like I say, aforementioned Ableton, a few other ones, and they weren't quite right for me. Nothing bad about them. They just weren't clicking with me. And then I saw a really negative review of FL Studio. And the review was like, "Oh, well, this isn't for serious musicians. This is for like those industrial people, or maybe the punks. People who just want to have fun." I thought, I just want to have fun. It reminded me when I saw my first Ramones review back in the 70s. It was like in Rolling Stone, and Rolling Stone hated the first Ramones album. Like, the songs are too fast, and nobody's playing any solos. And I'm like, well, where's the downside in that? So I immediately tried out FL Studio and became really, really into it. I was on their user page for a while, like their Prime user, or I forget what they call it, and Intense user, I don't know. And they eventually took me down and replaced me with, I'm sure, a real musician. But I was really kind of honored to be there for a little bit. Put me back FL Studio put me back. So like I say, this is what I use, and it works for me. Something different may work for you. And so one of the reasons that I really like it is, and this is just another little, and you can probably do this with other DAWs, but it's just another little side benefit, let's call it, is that I can put over here, there we see it, I can put in a little HTML file that has the set list. And then I can also, since it's an HTML file, I can also put little things in there like a little KLF symbol. So there you go. See, it's got lots of neat stuff. But again, the main thing is that I can control different parameters from the controller, and it just makes my life a lot easier. And again, I'm not lugging around, hundreds of pounds of equipment. Look how light this is. I just lift this. It's levitating. Oh, honey, the spirits are speaking to us. Is that you, Uncle Henry? Is that you? So, yeah, that's basic. Oh, I forgot to tell you. A lot of people wonder about the sound, how the sound gets out of this into the free world. There are two ways to do it. Some people just run a direct out, just a line out, or what would normally be headphones. I tend to do it a little bit of a different way. I'm going to fish this up here. And I use, right now I'm using the M-Track Duo, but what happens is the sound comes out of here, digitally into here, and then this converts it into regular audio, into analog audio. I used to use, let me dig this out, hopefully it's not going to screw anything up. It did, it moved the camera. No! I'm destroying everything, but that's punk rock. I used to use one of these. Unfortunately, I damaged the USB plug back here, and I replaced it, but it still didn't work. And it made Dean very sad, because Dean works under the premise that I can fix anything, and I'm still working on that because I don't want to let Dean down. So again, using this, the M Audio, to take the sound out of here and bring it out into the real world through these two little things here. All right, people, I hope that wasn't too technical. I hope you weren't bored by it. Please go out. If you're watching this on Saturday, go out and have a good day. And I hope maybe this encouraged some of you to experiment with some of these. And then I mentioned VST is virtual studio technology. So all these little things here, and you might see close-ups of some of them a little later. Those are VST's, virtual studio technology. I know some people who are talented musicians who just won't go near any of this stuff. It just, they're kind of like, it's just an area they're a little afraid to tread into, and I think that they should really go out there. I think that if you can, it don't cost that much, and some of the stuff you can get for kind of free, just go out and give it a try. And that's all I'm asking. I'm also asking that if you go back to 1992, please have plenty of black coffee on hand. All right, everybody, have a great whatever it is you do. See y'all later. Bye.
Unbelievable. Wow. I never dreamed that I'd look like this.